Welcome, friends. You are listening to the Mind Body Alchemy podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Miramontes. This is where intuition meets education in the realms of spirituality, fitness, mindset, and more, all to create lasting change. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the podcast, and thanks for tuning in. Today, we are taking on one of my favorite topics. We are talking about being a box checker and the difference between thinking about the things you have to do versus who you have to become in order to get to wherever you're going or achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. If you hang around me long enough, you're going to hear me say something along the lines of, you can't just willpower your way through to transformation. Instead of thinking about what you have to do, you have to think about what you have to become. And I'm sure you've heard it before, but it really does bear repeating. This is something that needs to become your permanent mantra until it becomes a philosophy that you really adopt and believe in. I firmly believe that permanent change requires this. But if you've never been where you want to be, it can be hard to imagine what that looks like, let alone actually start putting it into practice. It's especially confusing when the fitness industry sends out contradicting messages and seems to be not really agreeing and arguing over all of these little details. For example, one person might tell you that you must give up carbs in order to be lean. You can find evidence to see a lean person who has given them up. And so it might seem like the right thing to do. But if you are using discernment, you can also find evidence of lean folks who haven't given up carbs. And so, spoiler alert, you actually don't have to give up carbs. You can find evidence to prove both. Just because it benefits one person or one population does not necessarily make it a rule or anything that you need to even consider for your own strategy. One important question is, does this feel pleasurable and sustainable for me? And if the answer is no, then it's a no, or at least a not right now. Put it aside. That's not where we're going to start. A word of caution is to avoid the things that experts argue about the most. When it comes to putting your daily practice together, I don't want you to fuss with carbs, macro ratios, or think about whether or not fasted cardio is the way to go. Instead, pay attention to the things that most of the experts are agreeing on. And then keep going until you find a strategy that models who you really want to be and aligns with your values. Most experts agree that eating a variety of vegetables is a good thing. But if corn is the only veggie you've looked at in a while, maybe start small and start trying something new a few times a week. That might be your baseline. Many argue about whether or not diet soda is acceptable, but most of us agree that regardless of that, you need to drink plenty of water, especially if you're active. That might be where you need to start, just looking at where you might add a little bit more water into your day. Experts argue over how much weight training is ideal, or cardio, or if you should do group classes, or if you should just go to yoga. But all of us agree that moving your body is essential, even if we don't agree on how. It can easily become overwhelming. And in order to avoid the overwhelm and the indecision, you just need to take action. Just do one thing. You can fine-tune your strategy to work for you as an individual over time. Just because you decide to go down one road doesn't mean you're stuck on that path. You can always shift and pivot a little bit along the way until you find your perfect fit. I don't want you to think that you have to go from 1 to 1,000,000 overnight. You don't, and you'll likely burn out trying. Instead, take the big picture and break it down, and then break it down some more. What is one thing you can do to get closer to who you want to be? Once you find that out, then you can become a box checker. Now, being a box checker is not how we get transformation that lasts. I know, now you're saying, well, Steph, why do I want to be a box checker then? Well, because it's a practice. We've all known that person that behaves like a machine, does each step perfectly, follows the plan to the letter, never slips up, gets the results they were after, and then it all falls apart. In fact, they probably were never even happy with them to begin with. I've been that person more times than I can count, and I will tell you that it's frustrating and disheartening for sure. And that is because instead of changing my thoughts and intentions around the behavior, I just ticked the box each day. I know, I'm not convincing you to become a box checker very well, but hear me out. It's almost as if once you've ticked it enough times, you get to stop and go back to normal, whatever that means. But that is not what we're doing here. Instead of thinking of checking off that box, think about box checking as a practice, as your practice. There's a shift from you aren't checking off the box to lose weight. You're practicing being someone who lives in the size that you want to be. Since you aren't that size now, it takes some learning. In order to learn, you require practice. Just like playing a piano, you must build the skills. You can't just sit down and play a concert, right? Instead, you have to learn how to read music. And you have to learn how to push the keys, and you have to learn which keys together make which sounds. And once you've mastered that, you don't have to learn to read music again. And you don't have to learn where the keys are anymore. But then you have to build a new skill. You have to learn to push the keys together, make the right sound, and then do it at a certain tempo and a certain speed until it all comes together. And then you take on something harder and something harder. Over time, you go from someone who barely knew how to press the keys to someone who can play something really beautiful. And you would think, hearing all of this, that I know how to play the piano. I do not. But that goes for any skill set that you are trying to develop. And in order to build that skill set, you must practice. And in order to practice, you must check off the boxes day in and day out with the mindset that you are learning to become the person that you want to be. So as you do the daily box checking, which might seem just like the things that you've tried before, you must add that extra step of bringing in the new mindset. That is the trick. You are no longer checking boxes to lose weight. You're practicing how to live your life leaner. You're no longer eating 5 cups of vegetables a day. You're holding yourself accountable to practicing being someone who automatically gravitates toward meals that contain vegetables because you know that they're good for you. You know that they're going to be more satisfying. You know they're going to hold you over and give you energy and all of these other benefits. Not because you want to check off boxes that say, eat 5 vegetables a day and check, 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 but because that is who you want to be. And because of that, you must first consistently check that box of eating those veggies at every meal. While there's nothing wrong with having the end goal in mind, and in fact you should for clarity's sake, you can't just get in the car, want to drive to a certain location, and just hope you end up there. You might, but the likelihood is pretty slim, and you'd be much better off using a map or the GPS. You need some direction. You need to see where you're going. But I want you to ditch that timeline. I want you to ditch the urgency and consider this an opportunity for true growth. Patience is in short supply, and it's one of the main reasons that success eludes you. So put it all away and take that big picture mentality and break it down. Stop thinking about if I could just get this over with, if I could just do all the things all at once. You can do all the things all at once, but you've done that before, more than once, probably, and it didn't turn out very well because the urgency behind it is just to get to the end result, not to change who you are, because change is hard. It challenges us in ways that make us really uncomfortable. In order to make it sustainable, we've got to convince our brains that we're safe, that we're going to be okay. And in order to do that, we need to take the steps and we need to make them small. And we need to do them every day until it's boring, until you don't have to think about it anymore, until you can read music and you never have to learn to read music again. And then you take another step. And then you take another one. And eventually, as you build on these steps it becomes something different. You become someone different, and you get closer and closer to your goals. I hope this was helpful for you today. Please let me know if you enjoyed this, if you got anything out of it. Screenshot it, share it on social media, and of course, check out the show notes. You will have all the links in ways to tag me on social media, join my Facebook group, join my email newsletter, and all the things. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate reviews. So if you have just 1 minute to leave me one, I would love to hear from you. And that is it today. So you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.